Fellas, howdily doodly. All right, so this week, with this episode of Rewriting History with the Goob, I'm going to give a brief intro to the Selknam people and the idea that the modern day clown is an ancestral memory of the Nephilim. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Nezahualcoyotl real briefly, expand on a little bit of that I was talking about last week, and then I really need to stop being such a procrastinator. I didn't even write down my notes that were on my phone. They are on my phone. I just don't have them on a piece of paper, and I'm recording from my phone, so that's a little bit inconvenient. But we've got some more rocks that have impossible artifacts in them, and if we get to them, some fossils and some bad dating stories and just the unreliableness of history and science in general. So Nezahualcoyotl, or however you pronounce it, I made the claim a couple weeks ago that this guy right here, this very white, red-haired guy, was a white guy. But there's also this depiction of him, which is actually on the $100 note of the peso, I believe. And there's a few statues of him as well. There's a whole city named after him. The interesting thing is that these images of him are very modern images. This image didn't exist until recently, whereas this image of him as a white guy was made about 100 years after him, and it comes from this book, the Codex Ixtlil. I'm not even going to try. I mean, Jesus Christ, wow, what a language. All right. So the Codex was written about 100 years after Nezahualcoyotl's reign. And according to Wikipedia here, the artists of the individual pages are assumed to be Aztec natives. And the guy who collected the information and created it was Fernando de Alva Cortez, again, not going to try. And he was a direct descendant of that same name, and they were rulers of the Altepetl city-state of Texcoco. So I have an image here. This is the guy who created the book. This is a native. This is not a Spaniard. This is a native who was working along with a Spaniard, this guy, Viceroy Luis de Velasco, to create this codex. Those two guys were the main creators. This native, this rather pale-skinned native, he has dark hair, and I'm not sure what to make of his facial features, but clearly pale skin, along with this actual Spaniard, and with assumed native artists, created this codex about 100 years after the rule of Nezahualcoyotl. And in this codex, my computer is so slow that I don't really want to try and enlarge these images because I think it'll just take a very, very long time. But you can see there are clearly dark-skinned people in this codex, representations of what you would expect as an Aztec native. But then you also see images like this. This is Nezahualcoyotl. This is the author here that I showed you earlier. This is Nezahualcoyotl, one of the most influential Aztec leaders who really helped develop their culture. This is his son right here, so not red-haired, but still very pale-skinned. I'm not actually sure who this guy is specifically, but another pale-skinned individual. So this book, the point I'm getting at here is this book was not just a Spaniard rewriting the history of the Aztecs. The purpose of this book was actually to record the rituals of the Aztecs, these sacrilegious rituals. And as you see, there's plenty of dark-skinned people, but then there's also these white-skinned people. The last pages are just purely text. And so, you know, whoever you want to believe, if you want to believe the image of the on the money, the much more recent image is a more accurate depiction of Nezahualcóyotl, fine. But this was less than, or I think it was like 104 years after his reign, 108 years after his reign, something like that. Much more modern. The native that created it, are we to assume that this guy, this native right here, whitewashed himself in his own publication? I guess it's possible, but I think it pretty clearly shows that there were white people in South America prior to the Spanish Inquisition, or invasion, rather. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Comes out of nowhere when you least expect it. But yeah, there were very clearly white people there. There's still white people in South America today, which I think a lot of people falsely associate and assume that they're descendants of the Spaniards. But I think it's pretty obvious that there was already a white presence here. Where exactly they came from, who exactly they are, that's still debated. But I think there's some pretty clear and solid evidence that they're here. I mean, the natives' own myths, I seem to have frozen up. Hopefully you guys can still at least hear me. But their own myths are of white people coming to their land and, you know, influencing them. So easy on taking the Lord's name, Goob. Don't know if that's sincere. I'm a blasphemous person. I can try a little bit though. What's up, Mr. Here? Check out that guy's channel. What guy's channel? I don't know if I'm missing a comment. I seem to be totally frozen up. I am totally frozen over here. I don't know if you guys are seeing or hearing any of this. Yep, it just crashed. So I don't even know if I'm streaming right now. Goodness. I probably should have restarted my computer. It seems I'm still streaming. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. I'm going to restart the meeting and hope end other meeting. Okay, so the other meetings... I have no idea what's going on, fellas. Some technical difficulties here. I'm trying. I'm trying. Let's see if I can restart this. All right. I think I covered the Nezahualcóyotl part, so that's hopefully you guys heard all of that. Cool. I appear to be back. Hopefully you guys heard everything I said about Nezahualcóyotl. Basically, just re-emphasizing the idea that white people existed in South America and the Americas prior to the Spanish arriving, prior to Columbus arriving, and just re-emphasizing the idea of the flimsiness of history. So, okay, you hear me? Good. Good to know. All right, so on to the next subject. Goodness, my computer is struggling. My computer is struggling. So, a brief intro into the idea of the Nephilim being clowns, or the clowns being Nephilim. Hopefully YouTube doesn't ban me for the obvious cock and balls that are on my screen and were a part of my thumbnail. But the Selknam people are from Argentina, very, 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 very south Argentina, right next to Antarctica. And they are an extinct people now. Some Jewish scholars went down there and exterminated all of them, but that's neither here nor there. The Selknam people had this coming of age ritual where they would dress up in these costumes, okay, these brightly colored, polka dotted and striped red and white costumes, and they were trying to invoke the spirits. Here's an image of one of them. I believe those are feathers, white feathers, and the person's painted red, and you see a white stripe down the middle as well. I mean, some rather interesting get-ups they have here. And here's a good image with various depictions of them. So very, very flamboyant, unique costumes, that these people are wearing. And they would dress up in these costumes in their coming of age ritual, and they would go out and try and invoke the spirits of their ancestors. They're dressing up like their ancestors. That's what they believe their ancestors looked like. And they also believed that their spirits were still around and that they could be possessed by them. That was the entire point of their coming of age ritual, was to become possessed. By the way, these are friendly spirits. These are positive spirits. There's also some negative spirits as a part of their belief system, but the ones they're trying to represent here, the ones they're trying to be possessed by, are considered friendly and positive by them, and strength and stuff like that. So they would also send their dead off of the tip of Argentina to be carried by the ocean currents all the way to Antarctica. So they didn't bury their dead, but they sent their dead to Antarctica because that is supposedly where they were from originally. They originated from Antarctica. So this is just meant to be a brief intro. I'm not going to get too in-depth and involved in this, but this lines up with or involves a lot of other theories. So the idea of spirits and possession, the idea of demons and these other dimensional entities, whether you want to call them demons or spirits or ancestors or whatever, but the idea of possession clearly at play here. Antarctica is at play here. So when did people live in Antarctica? To our knowledge, never. But these people claim to have originated from Antarctica, the South Pole. There's also cave paintings which depict some similar looking creatures. There's the vertical stripe down the middle, this red and white, the polka dots, also the horizontal stripes, just the theme of red and white stripes and red and white polka dots, which is a theme heavily found in clowns nowadays, is found actually in a few different places throughout history. It's not just the Selknam tribe in Argentina. There's some similar images depicted in some African tribes, and there's even some cave paintings that seem to depict these types of beings, these giants with stripes and polka dots. And the basis of the premise is that people are afraid of clowns now. Why are people afraid of clowns? They're supposed to be this cheery, joyful, happy thing, and yet overwhelmingly the reaction to clowns is fear. And then there's some interesting attributes that clowns have: the curly red hair, the red nose, and the red lips. They wear giant shoes, and they often walk on stilts. They're also known for their magical properties. And so the stories of red-headed giants, the stories of Nephilim, if you combine all of these together, you end up with these giant, cannibalistic, curly, red-headed, pale-skinned creatures that adorned themselves in these striped and polka dot patterns. The bright red nose and the bright red lips, supposedly from the blood of consuming humans. You know, they're cannibals eating these other people, and that's why their face has got the red on it. And the clowns wearing the giant shoes and walking on stilts is a depiction of the giantness of these Nephilim, with the white makeup for the pale skin. It's a very fun and interesting theory. There's a guy who actually has an entire podcast dedicated strictly to this topic. And if you guys are interested in this topic, I can go more in depth in it. I can try and flesh out the details that I just kind of laid out. Same thing for any topic I've covered. If you guys want me to go more in depth into any of the topics I've covered so far, please let me know in the comments. If there's another topic you want me to cover that I haven't covered yet, let me know that too. But especially if there's something I've covered and you had questions about it, you're interested in it. I never posted the new join link for this meeting, so let me do that here. But yeah, if you want to know more about any of the topics I've covered, you want me to go more in depth in them, please let me know. I'd be happy to do that. History is mad flimsy, son. That it is, and that's going to be a big part of this episode. The small hats are going to give. Speaking of the small hats getting people, I don't know if you guys follow Robert Seffer at all. I've referenced his videos previously, and oh my god, the dude is on a warpath lately. Like, his last 3 or 4 videos are really, really, really going after the small hats, like in a genuinely dangerous kind of way. So if you're into that, check out Robert Seffer's recent videos. He's an anthropologist. He deals in history and ancient history and conspiracy and secret societies and all of that. So he's right up my alley. I don't know if I fully endorse absolutely everything he says, but you know, he's not a complete charlatan, at least I don't think so. Okay. So I might have to check my phone here briefly to look at my notes, because like I said, I didn't have time to transfer them to paper. So the Charnwood fern fossil, I believe, is the next topic I wanted to cover. And this is somewhat an impossible fossil for a few different reasons. One, it's a fossil of a fern, okay? And it's a fossil of a deep sea fern. So I'm not a fossil expert. I don't claim to be. I do need to do more research into the topic, but from my understanding of fossils, is that basically something gets covered up in dirt rapidly, and the pressure and the dirt somehow replace the bioelements with minerals, and they turn into stone. And I kind of follow that and get that for things like bone, but there are so many fossils of things like ferns, or just tree leaves, or one of the examples I have later is a fossil of a brain. Brains are really, really soft. They decompose really, really quickly, and we have a perfectly preserved fossil of a brain. Maybe it's just my ignorance, but that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. How are these fossils even being created? I talked previously about some objects found in stone, some impossible objects found in stone, and I was leaning towards the idea that we just don't understand how stone is actually formed properly. We have these ideas that they take millions of years and all of this stuff, and I think we're missing a very key element, because I could do an entire 2-hour episode very easily, specifically and strictly on impossible objects found in stone. The list is incredibly long. It is not just a couple of things. There's a very large amount of things found in stone that shouldn't be found in stone. And so, similarly, these fossils, how are we finding fossils of such soft objects? I don't know. I don't think we fully understand how these things are actually created. I don't accept the explanation. I take it back. I know everything about everything, Mr. Galunas. You can trust me. I am an expert, the expert of experts. But back to this specific fossil, this Charnwood pre-Cambrian fossil. So the story of this fossil here, there's this place called Charnwood. I think it's in the UK. And this 15-year-old girl was hiking, and she found this leaf here, this fern leaf. And she took it back to, she actually did a whole project on it in her high school science class. I don't know specifically what science class it was, but she did a project on it, and her high school teacher went, "You idiot, you dummy. This is not a fossil of a fern. You found this in the Charnwood forest, which everyone knows is pre-Cambrian. These rocks have been dated to the pre-Cambrian time period, and ferns didn't even exist in the pre-Cambrian time period. So obviously, you're mistaken." And she was dismissed. To be fair, it's a high school science teacher. I don't expect her to be at the forefront of science. And unfortunately for this girl, she did not take it any further than that. She didn't try and pursue this discovery further. And it was actually a few years later, a 16-year-old boy found a similar fossil in a similar area in the Charnwood forest, or whatever, this Charnwood area. And he took it to an actual professor at a university. The guy looked at it, and after some debate, they went, "Yeah, this is actually a fossil of a fern. It is pre-Cambrian," which now pushes the existence of ferns to the pre-Cambrian period, earlier than we ever thought they existed. This is after, of course, a lot of pushback, a lot of debate. The initial responses overwhelmingly were dismissal and denial, even for the second find. And the second find was actually a third find. Previous to either of these teenagers, there was like this 34-year-old dude who found a couple of these fossils. He found a bunch of these fossils in this area and tried to present them, but again was just dismissed. Because everyone knows the narrative was established. These fossils didn't exist in this time period, and these rocks were before this time period. Therefore, it's impossible. Therefore, we just dismiss your discoveries. You're a liar. You're a charlatan. You didn't really discover this. That is the overwhelming response, and it took 3 different people finding these fossils in these areas before anyone, in a whole lot of debate and back and forth, years of dismissal, before it was finally recognized, and they went, "Hey, maybe we need to adjust the timeline a little bit. Maybe these fossils were actually around 50 million years before we thought they were, or these organisms," right? So just beginning to highlight, as I've done many times, the flimsiness of history, the way that history is built upon assumptions of assumptions of assumptions, and once the narrative is established, they really, really do not want anything to go against it. regardless of, how solid the evidence is. And the next topic is Huayatlaco. These South American names are just impossible. I think I've already pulled it up. All right. So this is, I pretty much want to read this entire Wikipedia article because this is straight from Wikipedia, which is not the most reliable, is not the most unbiased. They definitely lean towards the narrative whenever possible. So I thought this Wikipedia article was really fascinating because you'll see as we read through this. So Huayatlaco is an archaeological site in the Valasquilo Basin near the city of Puebla, Mexico. After excavations in the 1960s, so this was 60 plus years ago, the site became notorious due to its geochronologist analysis that indicated human habitation at Huayatlaco was dated to circa 25,000 years before the present. And as Mr. Galunas is always talking about the Clovis people and how there's clear evidence that Clovis were not the first, this is another piece of supporting evidence for that. Yeah, I don't know if I would describe it as a mass debate, certainly a very critical debate of those things, though. And so these controversial findings almost double the earliest age assigned by the scientific consensus. Like I said, it's pushing it way before the Clovis culture. And this is not the only piece of evidence to do that. There's many, but they just get dismissed, as you'll see as we read through this Wikipedia article. Dismissal and ridicule and insulting and the destroying of careers is the standard when anything challenges the narrative. So, which generally traces widespread human migration to the New World to 13 to 16,000 years before present. The findings at Huayatlaco are the subject of continued debate by the scientific community and have seen only occasional discussion in the literature. So it's dismissed and then it's just ignored. The person presents their findings and people just stop talking about it because they know if they even address it, their career is in jeopardy. And you see this overwhelmingly so. So Cynthia Irwin Williams led the team that first excavated the site in 1962. The dig is often associated with Virginia Steen McIntyre because of her continuing efforts to publicize her findings and opinions. However, the site was actually discovered by Juan Armenta Camacho and Irwin Williams. Steen joined the team in 1966 as a graduate student, and the excavation was associated with the U.S. Geological Survey. It's 75 miles southeast of Mexico City. It's known for its abundance in animal fossils, and it was described as a kill site where animals were hunted and butchered. So excavations were conducted via standard protocols, including securing the site, blah, 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 that doesn't matter. So the early controversy, in 1967, Jose Lorenzo of the Institute of that claimed that the implements had been planted at the site by local laborers. And so basically he said that these fossils and these objects were just planted. They were modern and they weren't actually dug up. The Irwin claimed that these were malicious and without merit and cited statements of support from 3 prominent archaeologists and anthropologists who had each visited the site independently and attested to the integrity of the excavations. So immediately, this is attacked with just slander. I mean, just straight up slander. The guy goes, "Oh, you're faking all of this," and you see this very often, very, very frequently. Anytime anyone challenges the narrative, the immediate reaction is to attack them. In the mid-1969, Irwin published their first paper about dating the excavation site. The stone tools were discovered in situ, which means that they were discovered, in place. They weren't moved. They were in the ground still, in a stratum that also contained animal remains. They dated the animal remains with uranium dating and produced an age range of 260,000 years old to 60,000 years old. So I talked about bad dating, and man, it doesn't get much worse than that. 260,000 years old to 60,000 years old. This is uranium dating. You don't usually see the age range presented to the public. If you read this line right here, radiocarbon dating of the animal remains produced in age over 35,000 years, and the uranium 260 to 60. Typically, they're given a specific date. So if you were to read an article about this, they would probably give it a specific date of 80,000 or however many thousand years old. You don't usually see the range like this. I think they do that deliberately because they don't want you to know just how unreliable that is. I mean, 60,000 years old to 260,000 years old, that's over 400% difference of range. I mean, that's a ridiculous range there. And carbon dating is not accurate to these date ranges. 35,000+ years old, it doesn't reliably date things that old at all. So one of the explanations is that an old stream bed was there and deposited carbon, and that's why you see these complicated data. That doesn't actually hold up. The stream bed hypothesis. The team was also dating surrounding areas to try and make sure that their date ranges were accurate. They also used the zircon fission track dating method. So now we've used 3 different methods, and the samples from Huayllacloto's tool-bearing strata were 370,000 years old to 240,000 years old. So over 130,000 year date range. This is slightly better than the 260 to 60,000 years old, but still a massive date range. And none of these hardly overlap at all. So over 35,000 years old, that's a lot less than 60,000 years old. And then 240 to 370, there's 20,000 year overlap there with 260. But these are all 3 completely separate date ranges from the exact same area. I don't know how many samples were taken. I don't know how many tests were done. But it's just emphasizing the unreliability of dating methods and just how shady dating in the modern day is. You can't trust dating, folks. But yeah, I mean, it's to me that's just ridiculous. All of these dating methods are suggesting it is very old, right? So I think maybe there is something to that. I think maybe there is legitimacy in the claim that these are very old remains that they're finding. But to trust any of these dates is foolish, I think. So the confirmation of an anomalous distant age for human habitation at the Huayllacloto site led to tension between Irwin Williams and the other team members. Maid and Frixell announced the findings at a Geological Society of America meeting, admitting that they could not account for the anomalous results. Irwin responded by describing their announcement as irresponsible. Given the substantial margin of error for the fission track findings and the then new method of uranium dating, Irwin asserted that Huayllacloto had not been accurately dated to her satisfaction. I would say those are pretty fair complaints, honestly. I have the same complaints. For the next several years, the excavation team were often at odds as they discussed how to move forward with the Huaytlaco findings made, and Steen argued that the 200,000+ years findings were valid, while Irwin argued in favor of a more recent, though still somewhat controversial, figure of 20,000 years old. And that's a rather interesting number to come up with. As the Wikipedia article states, it's particularly puzzling as it was unsupported by any evidence that the team uncovered. So just the pure hesitation to change the narrative. They're going, yeah, these we can't really rely on these dating methods, and they're so far removed from anything that we currently accept. But I even with my hesitation and my pushback against these older dates, I do acknowledge that it is older than what we've currently found, but it just can't be that old, so I'm just going to say 20,000 years old. It is a rather interesting. I don't know how exactly she got to that conclusion, but it's interesting. So in 1981, a paper was published that defended the anomalous distant age of human habitation. The paper reported the results of 4 sophisticated independent tests: uranium-thorium dating, fission track dating, tetrahydration dating, which they didn't give the age for in this article, and the studying of mineral weathering plus the carbon dating. So there really was a lot of dating, and it seems that all of the tests done suggested a significantly older age than Clovis or anything else. The evidence outlined here consistently indicates that Huaytlaco site is about 250,000 years old. We who have worked on geological aspects of the Vasquillo area and are painfully aware that so great an age poses an archaeological dilemma. In our view, the results reported here widen the window of time in which serious investigation of the age of man in the New World would be warranted. We continue to cast a critical eye on all the data, including our own. So keep in mind that these people had already been getting attacked before even publishing this paper. They fully understand that their publication of this is going to be met with extremely strong criticism, that it quite possibly will end their careers, and they still stand by their data, and they still stand by the findings, and they still published it, and they're still presenting it because they genuinely believe this is something that is true. So I know I'm heavily criticizing the dating methods, but these people were willing to risk their entire careers to present what they thought was true. And you see this over and over and over again, people finding anomalous, so-called anomalous data, and they're immediately attacked, often by people who haven't even looked at the data, but they're told that they're insane. They know their careers are in jeopardy, and they still push forward because they want to present the truth. So I think that really counts for something. Williams objected to several points in the article and made a point-by-point rebuttal. Steen claims that some of the original research team was harassed, viewed as incompetent, or saw their careers hampered due to their involvement in such a controversial and anomalous investigation, exactly what I was just talking about. In 1990, Friesen and Walker discussed possible pre-Clovis sites dating to perhaps 20,000 years old, but argued against human habitation of Huaytlaco at 250,000 years ago. They argue that the stone tools found at the site are entirely too modern. So I love that argument. I absolutely love that argument. We're going to get into that a little bit more in some of the other topics I have to cover. But I mean, I mentioned that in the previous example of the fern as well. It's simply dismissed because those ferns didn't exist at that time. It can't be the case that what you're saying is true. Obviously, you're mistaken because we already know ferns didn't exist at that time. We already know tools of that type didn't exist 250,000 years ago. There weren't stone axes 250,000 years ago. That's utterly ridiculous. And so it's just anything that goes against the narrative can't be true. It's automatically assumed to be bullshit. It's entirely too modern to have possibly been manufactured by hominids of that era, and that the animal remains at the site are consistent with fauna that thrived no earlier than the last glacial maximum. Well, we just talked about, people believing that these underwater, these deep sea ferns didn't exist until 50 million years later than they did, apparently. So take that as you will. In 1996, Steen appeared on the television special The Mysterious Origins of Man, narrated by Charlton Heston. The program detailed a variety of claims that contradicted or challenged the scientific consensus about humanity's genesis and development. Frank Steger posted a rebuttal of the program, including Steen's statements on a Talk Origins discussion board. However, Steiger's rebuttal claims that Steen discovered an arrowhead in New Mexico rather than multiple artifacts in Mexico. It is unclear if the error is Steger's or a misstatement on the television special. Moreover, Steger's rebuttal makes no mention of the multiple peer-reviewed papers that appear to support the anomalous old age tool-bearing strata of Huayatlaco. The multiple peer-reviewed papers that support the old age. So again, despite all of the attacks, despite all of the ridicule and the dismissal, there were multiple peer-reviewed papers supporting this. Chicken time. Clowns first, baby. So biostratigraphic researcher Sam Van Landegam has published 2 peer-reviewed analyses that confirm the earlier findings of circa 250,000 years ago for the tool-bearing strata at Huayatlaco. His 2004 analysis found that Huayatlaco samples could be dated to the Sangamonian stage, 80,000 to 220,000 years before present, by the presence of multiple diatom species, one of which first appeared during this era and others that became extinct by the era's end. This was a 2006 paper, so the research on this thing has been going on for a very long time. And it refined and reconfirmed his 2004 findings. In 2008, during a Geological Society of America conference, Joseph Liddycote presented paleomagnetic research into the volcanic ash, and the ash was dated to sometime after the Brunhes-Matuyama reversal, circa 780,000 years before present. So, re-emphasizing the unreliability of dating methods, they're all garbage. If that doesn't, it's anytime I look into the specifics of dating, it's always this is not an exception. I really liked this example and I wanted to read through the entire thing because it includes carbon dating. It includes at least 6 different methods of dating, and all 6 of them return completely different results. There's almost no overlap between any of the results. All 6 of them have wildly wide date ranges presented. And yeah, it's kind of garbage information. It really is pretty much garbage information. But all of them confirmed that this was way older than Clovis. So take that as you will. I don't know how much reliability you want to put into any of those dating methods. I don't put a lot into them, but all of them agree that it's old. None of them agree on how old, but all of them agree it's significantly older than what we think. Just, again, the flimsiness of our history, the flimsiness of the narrative is not to be underestimated. So on to the next, which just trying to think about what the best way to make this flow. Let me give me just a second here as I think to myself. There was another topic. It's missing from my notes, unfortunately. But it again was just to emphasize how flimsy the narrative of science is. I am drawing a blank right now as to the specifics, but it was just another good example of how assumptions upon assumptions upon assumptions upon assumptions are made. It was kind of like the dating example I used there, where there's a whole bunch of different dating examples and all of them are inaccurate. But it was an example of, gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the specifics completely. But the general theme of history is that an assumption is made. I can even use the fern example a little bit. They assume they know the origin of those fern creatures. They didn't appear until after the Cambrian period. And so then any fossil that fits within those ferns or within that post-Cambrian period is now automatically assumed to be post-Cambrian, regardless of anything else around it, regardless of any other information around it. It's automatically post-Cambrian because we already know those creatures didn't exist until the post-Cambrian period. So it can't be pre-Cambrian, right? And it's an assumption is made, and then more assumptions are built on top of that, and you get 20 assumptions removed from the original fact, right, which probably wasn't true in the first place. And this is how the entire house of cards, that is the religion of history, operates. And unfortunately, it's not just history, it is all modern science. This religion of modern science is completely unreliable. It's completely just a joke, to be quite honest. It's got zero desire. I don't know if you can hear my dog snoring in the background, by the way. She's been freaking snoring the whole time. I know I can hear it. But yeah, just assumptions upon assumptions that were probably based on something false in the first place, and then we continue deviating further and further from the truth because we're further going down this path of assumptions and building more assumptions atop of it. And God forbid you go against any of these assumptions, your career is attacked, your career is ended, you're slandered, you're discredited, you lose your money, you lose everything. And this is just how science works, not just history, all of science. And I spent a lot of time in my early episodes really kind of attacking the credibility of modern science, and I stopped doing that as much in my recent episodes, and I want to get back to it because I cannot emphasize enough just how much the entire foundation of our world, the entire foundation of everything, is built upon garbage. It's all garbage. It's all lies. Let me launch a new meeting here. Oh my, I've been streaming for a while, so I don't think I'm gonna get to everything, but I'm gonna cover at least one more topic here. Let me get myself set up again here. By the way, if anyone wants to call in, as always, you're welcome. If anyone would like to share their thoughts, or if there's anything you want to hear more about. This isn't, there we go. And let me repost the new link here. Yeah, I really, really can't stress how garbage it is. I really can't stress how garbage it is. Yeah, all right. So the last thing I'll cover for today, because I am running out of time, I do have to get to my chickens. As I said, I could dedicate an entire 2-hour plus episode to objects found in rocks that shouldn't be found in rocks. This is one of them. It was my source here is a religious source, but the information it's presenting is, as far as I could tell, accurate and a pretty fair representation. So this guy, Mr. Anderson, hello, Mr. Anderson, found this bell as a 10-year-old boy way back in 1944 in a piece of coal. He saw, so the coal fell, it broke, and he saw some metal inside of the coal. So then he took a croquet mallet to it and carefully broke it open, and inside he found a bell. This bell has had people from Ripley's Believe It or Not investigate it. It was part of a 1992 CBS docudrama and a few other things. It's had some attention. So the bell is made up of mostly bronze, but it has, I think it was like 8 different metals in it, and the alloy is not a modern alloy. It's not a recognized alloy. So the idea that it's a modern figure is that goes against that. It doesn't seem to be a modern fake, is what I'm getting at here. It's still a fully functioning bell. It has a copper outer shell, or a copper bell, and then an iron bell ringer, whatever those are called. What are the clapper? The clapper is made out of iron. So there's 2 different types of metal in this. It still functions even after being broken out of a chunk of coal. It is still a functioning bell. The guy took a polygraph, and granted, this polygraph was like 60 years after he found it, but the polygraph said there were no signs of lying. The figure on the bell, which was found in West Virginia, this bell was found in West Virginia. The figure seems to be of Garuda, which is a Hindu deity's mount. It is the winged, let's see if I can find a good image of this. Here's a decent one. So you see, I think that's Vishnu, I forget exactly who, standing atop Garuda. So it has the wings out. In this one, he has 2 legs. In some depictions, the bird, I would assume he does have 2 legs, but he's only got 1 leg down in some depictions. I'm not seeing a good example here with Google Images, but I mean, you can definitely see the similarities between this and the bell here. It has wings, it has arms, it's got the legs down there. So it does look a lot like Garuda, which is Hindu. How did it end up in West Virginia? How did it end up in coal in West Virginia? Really not a good explanation. And let's see if there was any dating that was tried to. I don't think there was any dating on this. I don't think any dating could be done because the coal itself is no longer around, the chunk of coal. It's just the bell. Was that a call? I wasn't paying attention. I might have missed a call. If you did call in again. Sorry about that. I don't think this bell is actually an example necessarily of super ancient worldwide civilizations where Hindus were actually in the Americas millions of years ago. I think this is probably yet another example of we don't understand how these things are formed. And the weird metal composition, an alternate explanation to this being super ancient metal, is just that it was a bell made from scrap metal. So someone melted down various chunks of metal and made this bell. Even if you want to just dismiss this bell completely and go, this guy's lying, he didn't find it in a chunk of coal. Again, there are a very, 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 very long list of objects that have been found in rocks or coal. Some of them more verifiable than others, some of them more reliable than others. Many of them disappearing shortly after the announcement of their discovery. So I had a few examples pulled up earlier that I don't have pulled up now, but there's examples. The Dropa stones that I talked about a few weeks ago are, yeah, is someone calling in? I don't see anyone calling in, but I will answer for sure, Mr. Morin. I just don't see it. Am I missing it? I'm sorry. There are examples of objects being found in stones being documented by real people, being sent to real researchers for real studies, and being photographed. There's photographic evidence of their existence. And then shortly after they're sent to these researchers, and these researchers start confirming that, hey, this seems legit, they mysteriously go missing. This happens very frequently. This is not just a 1 or 2 times that this has happened. It is kind of the standard apparatus, modus operandi of these objects. Is these anomalous objects get found in rocks. They get sent off to a researcher. They're found by real people who have records of them, and then the object disappears very shortly after research starts getting done on it. So, yeah, take that as you will. I'm going to wrap up this episode. I didn't get to everything, which is totally fine. If you want me to go more in depth into any of these topics or any of the other topics, if you want a full episode on the Nephilim clown theory, let me know. I think it's a really fun theory. I don't know how much stock I put in it personally. A little bit, at least. But it's just a fun theory. I like fun theories, even if they're ultimately wrong. Like the idea that the Earth didn't orbit the sun until I think like 80,000 years ago or something like that, until really recently, that it was actually orbiting, I believe, Saturn as a brown dwarf, and was actually inside the sheath of the brown dwarf. So the plasma sheath. Really fun theory. I don't think it's true at all. I really don't think that theory is accurate at all, but it's a fantastically fun theory. So if you want the full Nephilim stream, or if you want an expansion on any other topics, let me know. Let me know in the comments. And I'm pretty sure that commenting, not just in the live chat, but in the comments, boosts algorithm interaction. So, give me a like, leave a comment, hook me up. But yeah, that's what I've got for this week. Really flimsy history, assumptions on assumptions on assumptions, attacking anyone who goes against the narrative. No matter how much evidence there is against the narrative, it is attacked. I wanted to talk a little bit about Gunung Padang. I wanted to talk a little bit about some other subjects as well. I'm running out of time here. Got to get to my chickens. But every example that I had and I didn't get to just was re-emphasizing this idea that history anything that goes against the narrative is automatically dismissed. It's automatically attacked. It doesn't matter how strong the evidence is. It's wrong, right? So often people who they'll even acknowledge, no, I didn't look at the evidence. I don't need to look at the evidence. This contradicts everything we know, and therefore it's wrong. That is genuinely a very frequent reason given for dismissal of these claims that contradict anything is, well, it goes against what we know. I don't even need to look into it. It's wrong. And this is done by reputable people, like big names. So yeah, I will definitely check out the channel. I'm not familiar with it, but another channel joined my stream. That's awesome. Thank you for checking out my channel, and I'm assuming you're talking about related stuff. So yeah, I'll look into it. Maybe we can guest each other's shows or something. I'll have to see what you make. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. The Nephilim Clowns is a wild ride. It's a wild one, and it's a surprisingly large topic. It's your channel. Oh, well, fuck you then. No, I'm just kidding. All right, I'll check out your channel. But yeah, leave a comment on any subjects you want me to go into more. Leave a comment, and I'll catch you guys next week.